I want to talk to you all about the first 4 missions of Halo Infinite's campaign, which I was able to play quite a bit early. I'm really keen on discussing this since I was able to get lost in the world of Zeta Halo, and it's quite a bit different than just seeing it online. Off the bat, I just want to tell you that my opinions are strong. A lot of concerns I had pre-launch were alleviated by what I played. It's the most cohesive sandbox and combat loop that I think a Halo campaign has had in a while, and it's able to achieve this without being a classic-style Halo campaign. It takes the core ideas from classic Halo and uses them to inform what Halo Infinite is trying to do. That sounded a bit weird and vague, so okay, let me go more in-depth right now. The campaign starts with a pretty cool inverse of the opening to Halo 1, where Chief is woken up from cryosleep as aliens invade a human vessel. In this case, Chief is woken up from cryosleep and invades an alien vessel himself.
We are the Banished!
Upon entering the warship, the game does a pretty solid job of establishing this new alien threat, the Banished. The Covenant and their ships always had this alien and elegant religious look to their vessels. The Banished are on the other end of the spectrum. They're dirty, they're rusty, they're industrialized. You fight through massive machines that are tearing down UNSC and Covenant equipment to provide raw material to craft their siege engines. Due to plot reasons I won't spoil, the Brutes and, by extension, the Banished have bonded through a particularly terrible tragedy, and their leader, Escharum, who is played by Darren DuPaul, the man behind Samuel Hayden from Doom, sort of the glue keeping them together right now. The Banished feel almost cult-like, but not in a religious sense, more in a brotherly sense. Escharum does a brilliant job as this aged warrior at the end of his life. He's desperately seeking purpose following the defeat of the UNSC, and he sees that purpose in the Master Chief.
So, run, Spartan. We will meet on the battlefield.
The story actually cuts over to his perspective, and the various audio logs allow you to get a bit of a peek into his headspace and what makes him tick. Within the first 4 missions of the game, I found Escharum to be a pretty compelling antagonist, who I think people will end up arguing is maybe one of Halo's best villains after Truth from Halo 2. On the heroic side of things, you can tell that 343 took a lot of criticisms that Halo 5 had to heart and worked hard to make sure that these protagonists stuck the landing. The pilot is this terrified, exhausted, and frustrated dude who simply wants to go home.
What? You think we can stop them on our own? I told you. We lost. We need help, not heroics.
The new AI the Chief is using, called the Weapon, is a brand new AI. So brand new that she doesn't have a name, and the universe is a new place to her. She begins the story with this childlike naivete due to her age, and the dark places that the first 4 missions go to visibly affects her, and by the end of the 4th mission, she seems kind of like a different character because of what happened. The Chief feels very much like a return to the good old days where he speaks only when necessary or when he wants to deliver the occasional iconic zinger that would look good in a trailer.
It's locked down. Requires a hack.
Okay. And you can do that?
No. New plan. Scuttle the ship.
But there is a surprising layer of emotional depth to him that is portrayed beautifully by the subtle animation work and motion capture performance. It's enough for a classic fan like myself to really enjoy Chief's company in this game, and there's enough there for those who did enjoy Halo 4's story to analyze what may be going on in Chief's head at any given moment. This is the strongest main cast for a Halo story, in my opinion, since the days of the original trilogy. Due to Chief's reserved and withdrawn personality, the pilot and the weapon act as kind of the humanity of the story, and the humanity they in turn bring out of the Chief is really interesting. Speaking of interesting though, let's talk about the gameplay. So, the intro of the game has you fighting through linear and carefully prepared encounters that feel and are paced more like something from the Halo games of old. Especially so when you actually get off that Banished ship and land on the ring, and you fight through some of the most beautifully rendered Forerunner environments I've ever seen. Seriously, the art team knocked it out of the park here. These look gorgeous.
What are those things? This is Forerunner, right? I've heard the stories, but man, this is crazier than I imagined.
The player is introduced to the combat loop slowly and taught how to engage each enemy type, with that Forerunner 2nd level ending on a proper boss battle. When I first saw the health bar, I groaned since I was expecting artificially bullet-spongy enemies, so imagine my surprise when, thanks to some smart sandbox usage, I was able to melt him the second I got his shields down. I've replayed that mission quite a few times and have tried different strategies and gameplay styles, and the way that the bosses seem to be designed in Halo Infinite is to reward strategy more than just shooting them. The bosses are as bullet spongy as you want them to be. Analyze what type of enemy it is and what you need in the environment to take those shields down fast. After killing the boss, we're finally let loose in the open world, which was the 3rd mission. And there's a naturalism to the world of Halo Infinite that I actually found incredibly refreshing. There's no hunting mechanics, no fishing, no random animals that are attacking you every 45 seconds when you're just trying to go on a hike like in Far Cry. There's a piece to the world of Halo Infinite that makes the hike to encounters really enjoyable. The sound design does wonders to fill the ring with this ambience. Birds and critters move about the place, and it gives me an almost Breath of the Wild kind of calm in between firefights with the Banished. There are no kill barriers in the game, at least none that I've found, unless, you hop off the ring to your death. So if you see a mountain, you can indeed climb it, and when you do end up finding something surprising at the top of that mountain, such as a skull, maybe a cute Easter egg, or even some cool environmental storytelling, you get the sense that this world 343 made wasn't just generated or made from a template. They wanted it to feel as carefully prepared as possible for your exploration and enjoyment. Something I would recommend for players is, if you can resist the urge, don't use your waypoint marker too much. Check the map for the direction you should be heading in and hoof it there on foot without mindlessly following your HUD. There is a lot of detail in the world of Halo Infinite that you may miss if you spend the whole time Spider-Manning your way through the trees after a tiny waypoint marker on your screen. I found some of my favorite moments in the game, getting lost, scaling mountains, or just taking a walk in the woods and stumbling upon something cool, all without firing a single shot. And that's not to say that shooting doesn't exist, because it certainly does, and it's handled really well. The care 343 took in converting Halo's combat loop into an open worldish setting is really commendable. It took a bit of an adjustment period to get used to, but the verticality, scale, and range of the fights flow rather well when making proper use of the sandbox around you. The grappling hook may be the back-of-the-box feature for Halo Infinite, but I think it's what you use that hook for that is the real star of the show. Halo Infinite's combat is incredible, and it's a combination of many things that make it feel so good, in my opinion. The art, the level design, and the sandbox design. The art team and character team made sure to give each enemy you fight clearly defined colors and silhouettes. The level designers then made sure that each location had this almost playground-like feel, filled to the brim with sandbox items for both the player and the Banished to use against each other. And finally, the Sandbox team, who crafted that strong campaign sandbox in the first place. It's one of the more focused weapon and just environmental sandboxes in the series, and it's definitely, in my opinion, 343's best campaign sandbox yet. This is just a lot of fun to play. The game also makes sure to pace that sandbox too. It doesn't just dump the whole thing on you within the first minute. In fact, you don't even see an elite until Mission 2. As I played and stumbled upon new gadgets, vehicles, and enemy types, the combat pacing only felt tighter and tighter, culminating in this epic siege on a Banished tower, which almost reminds me of the battle below the Truth and Reconciliation in the first Halo, but on a grand scale.
So, the demon is here. Did you think I would let you walk right into my tower? My tower!
And all of this is being punctuated by what I think is Halo's best soundtrack since Marty O'Donnell, Michael Salvatore, and C. Paul Johnson moved on from the series. There's a focus on these classic tribalistic drum beats and Celtic-style strings that feel like the enemies are about to break into this Irish dance or something. There's a healthy mix of pianos and really soft, dreamy choirs in there as well, more staples of Halo's musical identity. And I think what shocked me more is when the musical spectrum felt comfortable enough to just use older songs during combat or when exploring. A bit of musical continuity that I felt was missing from some of the other 343 Halo titles. I loved the soundtrack a lot during the first 4 hours, and I'm really happy with the confidence that 343 has in carrying Halo's musical identity into the modern era. It's a really good soundtrack, and the hairs on my arms stood up when I heard the surprising, wispy synths of Under Cover of Night. It may have been the first 4 missions, but due to how player dictated the pacing of those missions were, especially Mission 3, the open world, I found an opening to a Halo game that I got completely lost in. The combat loop I found to be really well designed, the art direction jaw-dropping at times, and the respect for player agency in an open world setting was really incredible. This is also where I do want to mention some of the stuff that I hope is solved before launch. So I played the first 4 missions quite a few times on different consoles, but I'll be speaking mostly about the Xbox Series X version of the game. While the frame rate was really solid, the presentation of the game didn't make it feel that way. Many animations in the game don't seem to update at a correct frame rate, which causes things to look juddery. One minute you're reloading the assault rifle and it looks really buttery and smooth, and then you start climbing a rock and your hand looks like it's updated at only 4 frames per second. The problem gets worse if you play in the 120Hz mode, where you notice other things like foliage, particle effects on Forerunner weapons, and other such things sometimes running at lower than 30 FPS, and it just gives the game this strange mismatched look. The cutscenes especially take a hit to their presentation, since various elements such as camera positioning, mouths, and even subtle facial expressions looking really choppy and out of sync with the game's frame rate. It reminded me a lot of Halo 1 on the MCC prior to its graphical fixes, and it's not something I wanted to see in a next-gen game. I do hope this is just due to it being a pre-release thing, and maybe it's something 343 can fix, because otherwise, I found the game to be really gorgeous. Especially the indoor environments. I mean, goddamn, the Forerunner environments are beautiful. And that just about concludes my early impressions of the campaign. I find it to be really strong. But what do you all think? I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts. It's one thing to see it, and it's another thing to play it, so sound off in the comments section below and get some discussions going. And also, a huge thank you to the supporters of the channel, whose names will appear right here. You guys are awesome, and by the way, we're almost at 170,000 subscribers. We're almost there. I'll leave you guys to it, and I'll see you on the next video. Enjoy your weekend.